Okay, so I am live here and I wanted to just share a story that I'd written today. It's interesting. So let me read that to you. As I walked this morning, smelling the fresh air and listened to birds chirping, I met my neighbor looking rather worried. Hi, Jane, I said with a full smile. Oh, hello, replied Jane. And this was kind of unusual for her to be tired at this time. She was a walker in the morning with a dog. I said, "How are you, Jane?" I started to get nervous because she looked rather worried. She said, "I'm okay. But did you hear about this robbery that's taking place in random homes around the city?" No, I said with curiosity. Well, she explained that some folks were getting robbed, even though they had locked their homes, and that apparently there's a locksmith in town on a whirlwind tour who's actually giving away very strong locks to people if we could go to him, and it's just giving it away for free. So Jane has had her driving license suspended, so I offered to drive up to this amazing locksmith. We decided we won't waste any time and get to this locksmith right after breakfast. So I came home and hurriedly prepared my regular smoothie with oats, nuts, and mushroom coffee. And without taking my time, as usual, I dunked it down because I didn't like the look on Jane's face and I really wanted to help her get her lock so she could feel safe. Jane is in her late 60s, generally agile, but lives alone. So, in this situation, she's feeling fragile and thinks getting the lock will take away that fear and she can go about her life, continuing to make her amazing paintings. She's an artist. So, by 9 a.m., Jane and I were sitting in my car, and with my foot on the gas pedal, there was nothing coming in our way to get that lock to take care of these pesky robbers that no one had seemed to get a handle on. I'm not sure why I had not heard about them, but it's likely because I don't own cable TV and nor do I have any news apps on my phone. And I only look at my messages at night to connect with friends and family. So it's not a surprise that I did not know much of the BuzzFeed. So talking to people like Jane is my way of getting the news. So we live in a small town, so nothing is really far off, and everything's within 10 minutes. Just after 9 a.m., we were at the parking lot of this touring locksmith. We found him with his great big tent and a great big smile to welcome all people from town who wanted that amazing lock. We walked up to the friendly guy who had a picture of the big lock behind him that would take care of these robbers. He even had these like packaged locks. He asked us which part of town we had come from and how we heard about him. Instantly, we felt welcomed and knew we were in good hands. So I asked him, his name is Juno, Mr. Juno, please help Jane find a lock that'll work on her tour and that she can install herself and, more importantly, be able to operate on her own, given she had arthritic fingers and was of a small frame. And I was expecting he'll show us the different kinds of locks he has. But he told us that that was just one lock and that would work on every door. I was a bit confused, especially looking at the lock, which looked like really big. I mean, it was a foot high. I'd never seen a lock that big. It had a kind of a shape of a lock, but there was no key. I asked, how would she open it? I had so many questions instantly, but Jane touched my hand softly and told me to look behind, and I saw there was a big lineup behind us by now. About 50 more people had shown up, and it looked like Juno wouldn't have time to answer all these questions, and we might end up with no lock. So Juno explained that in order to install and operate it, we will get an operating booklet which will explain everything, or we could opt for some people to come and install it, and that would be a little small fee for that. And of course, Jane chose that, and I said, "Yeah, that's a great idea because I'm not really good at all that." So I was happy that she chose that option. And the lock was being given for free, so there was only so much service we could get, especially because it looked like this was the only lock in town and that these robbers could not break into. So we quickly gave him our names and address for it to be delivered. I was still thinking in my head about so many questions a locksmith would have asked. How big is your door? How old is your door? What kind of lock mechanism can be installed in the door? Like so many. I'm not a locksmith, but I was expecting that there will be more questions. But I was expecting to be shown a choice of locks. But I guess when you get something as good as this for free, there's no point in asking all these questions, right? Additionally, someone will deliver it and install it. So Juno asked if I wanted one too, but I was still very confused. So I just shook my head and said, I'll come back later once I see what is done to Jane's house. And I really looked stupid, and people looked at me like, well, why did you come here if you didn't want one for yourself? It's for free. It's giving you. Don't know how long it's going to be available for. But I I just did not. I couldn't process it. Back in the car, I could see a big relief on Jane's face. She even offered to take me out for a cup of coffee and visit the art gallery downtown. Now that it was all taken care of, the instant relief that Jane felt was priceless. And I thought to myself, what a good God gift this Juno guy was. I blessed him, gave him one final look, and he smiled back and waved out at me while attending to so many other troubled people. Seriously, we have to bless such people working for the good of society and not be so skeptical and ask questions, especially when the good outweighs the possible risk, right? And that's what I was thinking. I said, I shouldn't be such a sore thumb sticking out and asking questions of people who are doing good. So 2 days later, I got a call from Jane, who was all excited that the lock guys were coming to install the lock on her door, and if I wanted to see how it all works, I should come in at 8 a.m. Yes, I was curious. So I walked over a block to see this innovative burglar deception system. Juno's squad was super efficient, and they were at Jane's house at 7:30 a.m. When I walked into her driveway, I saw her door had already been taken off and put away in their truck. The men were busy drilling holes in her doorway, and the 1 foot high lock was sitting pretty in its futuristic packaging in her living room. Jane was already mesmerized by the new lock. I was curious, like, okay, what's going on? Why is the door in the truck? And I watched the drilling exercise with interest, and I was curious to see what kind of a door would this lock go into. Would they put her door back, or do they have another door? Because we hadn't really talked about another door, so it was kind of interesting. And by 8:30, all the drilling was done, and the men were packing their gear and tools and got into the truck. Without meaning to be distracting, I asked them, what kind of a door would you install this lock in? They said, we have to bring the door to our factory, which is an hour away. So they will get back in 2 days and then install it back in. Like the same door? Yeah, we have to do some things to it before it can be put back, but we can't do it here. With that reply, they just rolled the truck off. Jane's driver was speeding off to another troubled customer. I'm like, I think I had to pick up my dropped jaw from her driveway. Once I had that done, like literally picked it back up, I ran into Jane's house and found her whistling away and dancing and admiring the lock in the package. I thought Jane was not aware that she would not have a door for 2 days. I didn't know how to break that to her. Well, me being me, I couldn't help but ask Jane what her arrangements were for the next 2 days. Jane replied, I know it feels strange to not have a door for 2 days, but it's a small price to pay for a really good lock. She said, you see, once I have it installed, I would not have to worry about those robbers who've been keeping me awake these nights. I've been getting out of bed with a stick at the slightest sounds at night. Just 2 more nights, and then this amazing lock will give her the peace of mind she needs. I said, Jane, what if those robbers come in these 2 nights? Now you won't have any door. But Jane was in a state of bliss. She she did not worry about the 2 nights without the door. And she worried more about her previous door not being good enough to ward away the robbers, but it's kind of interesting, right? I don't know. What would you do? Like, would you be okay with no door for 2 days, 3 days, or a week? I don't know. Um, especially if you knew that there. your house could be robbed, um, but you have hopes of a really good door after 2 days. Kind of tricky, eh? I don't know. I would not leave my house for even an hour with no door. And, like, okay, an hour in the daytime while I was fixing the door in my house, that's fine. I did have my door fixed. And it took a full day. But at night, I wasn't sleeping without a door. So my head was spinning. Why could I not feel that state of bliss? Why was I asking all these questions? Like, why is there just one lock and not options to choose from? How can the same lock work on all the doors? How, like, some doors are different. And can everyone operate that lock? Like, what about older people, younger children? Like, mm, how did they, why are people comfortable with no door for 2 nights in the hope of getting a really good lock, but not worried about the loss of protection for these 2 nights? And they're willing to take that risk. So in those 2 nights, if you get the robbers or someone comes in and kills you, robs your house, then you're willing to take that risk, but not willing to keep your old door and kind of strengthen it. It's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Why was it so important for people to get a lock on one door and not worry about all other possibilities that robbers could still come into the house from, right? I mean, these are just the basic 5 questions. I just like to know. This is a story, but I'd like to know, what would you do in this situation? So at this point, Jane had her hand around me and was comforting me and telling me, you should also get that log, and that'll make you feel less stressed. So let me know what you think about this story. Okay. Mm.